In Planet Reddit, today's story is...
My sister accused me of spying on her in the shower so she could stay at my apartment, but she forgot a crucial detail that changed everything. My older sister has a special gift for manipulating the truth. From a young age, she could instantly play the victim, turn any situation to her advantage, and convince our parents that she was the injured party, no matter how obvious it was that she was the problem. Whether she started fights, broke valuable objects, or lied blatantly, her tears appeared at will, her true secret weapon creating convincing stories that transferred the blame to me. Our parents always fell for her trap. I learned early on that arguing with her was useless. No matter how much evidence I presented, or how obvious her lie was, she stubbornly clung to her version, refused to accept any responsibility, and our parents inevitably gave in. This pattern became constant. If she wanted something, she got it. If she made mistakes, others paid the consequences. If she was caught lying, she would stick to her falsehood, make a fuss, and make everyone's life miserable until she got her way. For this reason, I have avoided her presence throughout my adult life. Unlike her, I managed to become independent at the age of 18. I got a full-time job after finishing school, I paid my own rent, and I distanced myself from her and my parents. She, on the other hand, continually made a mess of things, losing jobs, buying cars, and burning bridges, metaphorically speaking. No, she has never burned any bridges, literally. My parents are partly to blame for this, because they always came to her rescue, covering up her mistakes and fabricating justifications. There was always an explanation for her problems. My parents could have written a holy book about my sister with so many miracles invented to justify her. Last month, my parents called in desperation. My sister had lost another job, was facing eviction, and had run out of options. I expressed my confusion as to why they were telling me this, ruling out the possibility of her living with them, even though they have more than enough space. Apparently, according to the gospel of excuses from my sister, that was impossible. Curiously, that same sacred text indicated that I should accommodate her. I wondered if that book also mentioned women of dubious reputation, as in the original version. I refused immediately. I could see the outcome perfectly. She would trash my apartment, ignore my rules, and treat me like her personal servant. My parents did not care about my refusal, nor did I care about maintaining my position, as I was absolutely certain that she would not reside with me, regardless of her situation or parental protests. Faced with the failure of my parents, she decided to present her case in person to persuade me. It was the worst possible strategy. If my parents failed, she had even less chance of success. Her voice alone irritates me deeply, a factor that is counterproductive to her objective. When she discovered my refusal in the first 10 seconds of the call, I literally said to her, "If you are calling looking for accommodation, I will save you time by informing you that there are no rooms available." Obviously, she would reject this answer, but I pretended to be going through a tunnel and hung up. Not even she would believe such an excuse, considering that the nearest tunnel is 500 kilometers away. However, she decided to metaphorically go through one by showing up at my address. I don't know how she located my residence. She never visited me, nor did I provide her with my address. My parents know her, which is a pretty good guess. As I usually have friends round for video games or other activities, I simply opened the door. She wasn't there to play any video games, at least none that I would have liked. I told her that I was just going out and closed the door behind me, adding that the fumigators would be coming soon. Again, she didn't believe it, but she understood perfectly well that my answer was no. She gave me a cold look and warned me that I would regret it. Some nights later, I arrived home exhausted from work, eager to rest. Instead, I found a nightmare. My sister had broken into my apartment and was sitting on the sofa, trembling and crying. As soon as I entered, she shouted for me to stay away. Before I could question her presence or method of entry, she accused me of spying on her during her shower. Between sobs and tremors, she claimed to have seen me watching her through the bathroom door. Before I could process her words, she took out her phone and called our parents in front of me. She gave the performance of her life, crying intermittently and finding it difficult to speak. She told them that she was terrified, that I had allowed her to stay, but only to spy on her. She had even brought clothes scattered around the room where she was waiting, to back up her story. I heard my parents yelling on the phone, calling me disgusting. My mother was crying, vowing never to speak to me again. I wasn't even there when all this supposedly happened. I had no idea what she was talking about. But it didn't matter. My sister had already succeeded, implanting that idea in their minds. Then I remembered the cameras. Months earlier, after packages had been stolen from the building, security cameras had been installed in the common areas. My sister had overlooked a crucial detail. Her story was physically impossible. I asked to review the nighttime footage, which revealed the whole truth. My sister was seen entering my apartment with keys, closing the door and staying inside for 2 hours. I never appeared on camera after having left 5 hours before her arrival. The cameras picked up something else. Her watching the front door, presumably verifying my arrival, and then closing it again. I knew exactly what her intentions were: to set a trap for me. Without a second's hesitation, I sent the recording to my parents before she could further distort the situation. His story contained further inconsistencies. He told my parents that he had watched me for at least 15 minutes, not daring to leave for fear of my actions. However, the camera record showed just 2 minutes between his call to my parents, a fact they themselves confirmed by checking their incoming calls. My current concern is focused on minimizing any attempt by this disturbed person to ruin my existence. First, I filed a police report. I requested a record of calls received by my parents, anticipating possible retractions, and I provided the security recordings. A report can have broader consequences than simply informing my parents. Edit. Many people question why my sister acted like that, knowing that there were cameras. The reality is that she didn't know. She had never visited my apartment. The cameras are strategically placed so as to go unnoticed, for both security and aesthetic reasons. She probably didn't notice them when she entered. As for the keys, I don't know where they came from. When she left my apartment, I asked her how she had got in, but she refused to answer. I warned him that I could call the police immediately to explain, as he had entered without authorization, raising many questions. He finally handed me some keys, although I don't know where they came from. My parents have no copies, ruling them out as a source. Fortunately, I recovered them, preventing him from claiming that I had provided them to him to support his accusations. Update 1. After reporting my sister for trespassing in my home, I expected her to leave me alone. Apparently, no one informed her about the complaint against her, so she tried to aggravate the situation. The morning after I reported her, I received a message from my landlord asking me to call him urgently. It turns out that my sister had filed a complaint accusing me of harassing her in my own apartment. She probably thought that if she lied enough times, I would be expelled as revenge, or maybe she could stay until the end of the contract. She obviously didn't plan properly. When my landlord explained the situation, I wasn't even angry. I simply shared the security footage. I also detailed the previous events and provided a copy of my complaint. Little else needed explaining. After seeing the footage, he not only backed up my version, but was outraged by it. My sister no longer limits herself to false accusations against family members to get accommodation or to take revenge for my rejection. Now she involves third parties. People who could react negatively to such accusations. In fact, they do, although showing them the security cameras manages to calm them down. I contacted her, informing her about my complaint for trespassing, expecting another tantrum, but it was worse. She went into a total crisis. She insisted that involving the police exposed the matter to too many people, arguing that this problem should remain a family matter. She may have been right until the morning call from the landlord, but now she had no excuses as she herself had started to involve outsiders. Predictably, she contacted my parents, claiming that police intervention was a serious matter. I received multiple unanswered calls and various messages. What was remarkable was that they were not angry with her, but with me. Their reasoning, similar to my sister's, suggested that nothing serious happened because she only lied to our parents. When I mentioned the landlord's intervention, information they were unaware of or pretended to be unaware of, they replied that it had already been resolved without serious consequences. However, if the police pursue the complaint, there is a risk of imprisonment. For my parents, the consequences of their actions and mine differ enormously. Therein lies the problem. The consequences varied thanks to the cameras. Without them, my own parents would probably be reporting me along with my sister. My response was direct and severe, regardless of whether I addressed my parents. I stated that she accused me of perversion, insinuating inappropriate interest towards my sister. The fact that the situation did not escalate is solely due to Tina's absolute incompetence. With better planning, I would surely be arrested more quickly than it will take for her to be arrested. They should be grateful for their remaining hours of freedom, using them to escape to Canada instead of contacting me. To clarify any doubt, this conversation is useless. I will not withdraw the complaint. After hanging up, I returned to the police station to inquire about progress. I was only informed that they were continuing to review recordings. The slowness of the process contrasts markedly with the speed they would show in the face of accusations of perversion, incest, or other fabrications by my sister. Update 2. It has taken more than 48 hours to process my complaint and take action, but they finally searched for my sister to arrest her, where she remains as I write. They located her at my parents' house, where she took refuge after I filed the complaint. At least they considered that possibility when I filed the complaint, as it was the first place they checked after issuing the arrest warrant. The positive thing about the delay is that, as it is Friday afternoon, they are as slow to review simple recordings as they are to continue the process. No judge will work late on a Friday at this time, forcing my sister to wait until Monday to find out about bail. Additionally, my parents will have to pay it, knowing my sister's financial incapacity. According to my online research, bail could reach $50,000. However, depending on the severity, it could vary significantly. This will be determined on Monday when a judge evaluates her case and decides on bail. Partly, I want her to remain in detention until trial. I doubt that she will try anything against me now, aware that any hostile look would provoke another police call facing additional charges. But another part of me, the understanding brother, considers that roof and bars constitute safe accommodation. I found her accommodation, including food and private security. There are certainly restrictions. Evening walks are probably forbidden, and if she insists, there is the possibility of aggression with police instruments. But it is cheaper than renting, minimizing damages. The real damage will affect my parents if they try to hire a defense lawyer. It is preferable to abandon her to the public defender. As I understand it, they are experts in guaranteeing prolonged stays for people like her. Addition. Today, Tuesday, my parents bailed my sister out for $5,000. In return for that money, they opted for public defense until trial. They couldn't afford both, and she preferred immediate freedom with a public defender to remaining incarcerated. Not even the gamblers in Las Vegas would dare to go that far. If the public defender does not stand out, which is highly likely, she will end up in prison for a longer period anyway. Update 3. My sister's trial was due to start a week ago, but assessing her slim chances of winning, she decided to abscond. I admit that escaping was her best option considering the chances of a legal victory, although that decision made her situation worse. I doubt she can remain a fugitive permanently. Eventually, she will face justice for illegally entering my home. In this regard, I noticed that recovering her keys was irrelevant, as the recordings show her entering with another copy. The mystery of how she obtained them was expected to be solved during the trial, but without it, it will remain unanswered. However, I am confident of her eventual capture and subsequent developments. I do not envisage scenarios where my sister survives in the woods, hunting while eluding the authorities. In a week's time, they will probably find her hungry, dehydrated, begging to be arrested just to feed herself. In any case, my parents lost the deposit due to her failure to appear in court. I consider her escape absurd, as she only entered my home without permission. She did not assault me or steal any belongings. She only made false accusations, which I will mention later. Her sentence would have been minimal, perhaps months or weeks, even with a lenient judge, possibly only community service and a criminal record. However, after escaping, his sentence will increase significantly when he is captured. Even so, I hesitate in front of years in prison, but losing bail like that was foolish. He should face trial and the consequences of his actions. Regarding his false accusation, although technically it did not constitute a formal complaint, I was awaiting this trial. I wanted to conclude with a guilty verdict, supporting my defamation lawsuit. I planned to give that post-sentence gift, but now I'll have to wait. I hate waiting. Whether my sister is lucky or the authorities lack motivation, it could be months before she is captured and brought to court. Temporarily, it comforts me to imagine her escaping from forest bears, screaming desperately like a cartoon character looking for food. Until there is news about my sister, I will not provide any further updates. Until then, goodbye. Update 4. I have plenty of news about my sister, her trial, my lawsuit, my life, and events that could have happened during this period. First, how and when they located her. I was expecting a week, but they surprised me. They found her in another town trying to survive. She wasn't hunting or fleeing through the woods, but executing an even more absurd plan. Perhaps you've seen YouTube series where people survive for days, starting with a penny. She replicated this by running out of resources, acquiring cheap products in shops to resell them on t-shirts. The problem: she lacked popularity, audiovisual equipment, and reality works differently. Worse still, someone perceived suspicious behavior, alerting the police, facilitating identification, and return for trial. Without this intervention, she would continue to be a fugitive. Honestly, I don't think she would have survived many additional days either. After her return, brief legal proceedings were initiated given the conclusive evidence, security recordings. She had no counterarguments. The judge explained that normally similar cases receive 1 month in prison with community service. But because she had escaped, he increased it to 3 months in prison, doubling the community service. I discovered the origin of her keys. A building manager had provided them to her without knowing her reasons. Significantly, residents voted to fire him, and he will also face charges for collaborating with her. My parents didn't even attend the trial. Apparently, losing $5,000 in bail was enough for them to declare, "That's it." They positively began to abandon her, allowing her to face the consequences alone. Maybe that way she'll grow up. Some people grow up academically, others in prison, some never. Bet on her destiny. Interestingly, after her trial for trespassing ended, I sued her. A week after the verdict, I filed a lawsuit. It was not for a significant amount, but limited to defamation against my father, landlord, and friends. Fortunately, her lie did not proliferate enough to destroy my reputation, although it could potentially have done so. My lawsuit was intended to demonstrate the seriousness of the matter and the consequences of capricious false accusations. I also wanted to send her a clear message with my lawsuit. You're in prison. Deal with my lawsuit. You tried to ruin me for rejecting your claims. Now suffer more. You plan to harm me after your release. Reconsider because I can sue again. Enjoy your imprisonment. Obviously, this is not documented, but that's how I interpreted the situation. Understanding half of the message satisfies me. That half: don't provoke me because I am not our parents and I will not tolerate your absurdities. This lawsuit ended after her release from prison. I achieved something greater than financial compensation: her written commitment stating that repeat offenses will allow successive lawsuits until she begs for prison admission. Certainly, I would not obtain compensation for non-existent actual damages, but this exceeds any restraining order because of its usefulness in future litigation. She currently resides in another city, now legally free and not a fugitive from justice. This made it possible for her to get a job, as I found out. I consider this ideal, as if she were unemployed, she would probably spend time planning new follies. Some of them potentially, including me, but I prefer her to stay busy with her own life. With this, I conclude, hoping it will be the definitive update. I have written at length, doubting that any additional events will occur. Perhaps I will be wrong and reappear soon. I sincerely hope that both my parents and my sister exclude me from their lives. They perpetually ruin their lives with foolish decisions, but I would appreciate it if they did so without involving me. Issue 1. Those who ask how my parents ruined their lives, initially with $5,000, a considerable sum for them, also through negative publicity in court. Everyone knows who their parents are. Issue 2. Apparently, my sister underwent a radical life transformation by performing a ridiculous act, not against me, fortunately, but by suing our parents for poor upbringing. In effect, she sought to hold them legally responsible for her resulting personality. I have mixed feelings about this. Parents have educational responsibility, but only to a limited extent. As a minor, she would have more coherence. But as an adult, she must take responsibility for her own decisions. I will not defend my parents, they were terrible. A stranger offering street sweets would surpass their parental abilities. But having reached adulthood, my sister must assume personal responsibility, regardless of previous parental negligence. If she genuinely changed, she would demonstrate this by living a better life, not by looking for external culprits. Suing my parents is evidence of a persistent belief that external factors determine her life, as if she lacked self-determination. But she has the decision-making capacity to improve her life and character. Predictably, the lawsuit was quickly dismissed, as I investigated. At least their conflicts remained between them, completely excluding me.